Mr. Speaker, this question is to the Prime Minister. How does he stand by all his statements?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
On foot.
Brilliant, isn't it,
Order. Order. Brilliant. Order. Not sure.
The man's a witness,
Order.
half right.
Order. We now need to get to the serious business of question time with substantially less interjection from quite a number of prominent people in the House. The Right Honourable Winston Peters, supplementary question.
How can he stand by his statements yesterday that New Zealand, and I quote him, is not a tax haven, end of quotes, and that we, and I quote him again, also have an extensive disclosure regime, end of quotes, when specialist law firms on trust for foreigners point out there is no need for disclosure of identity or trust registration or for any such trust accounts to be audited?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Because I'm right.
Order. This is now the third time I've asked for a little bit of cooperation, and I'm going to have to expect it in the future. Right Honourable Winston Peters.
Supplementary question.
Supplementary question, the Right Honourable Winston Peters.
How can he argue that he is right and that our legal requirements and obligations are both transparent and require disclosure when IRD is not required to share information with foreign jurisdictions unless that jurisdiction suspects offending and then asks them for information?
The Right Honourable
Speaker,
Prime Minister.
Because I'm correct and the member's wrong.
Point of order, Mr. Speaker.
Order. Order.
Point
of order, the Right Honourable
Mr.
Winston.
Speaker, I am not saying that I'm right. I'm asking him a simple question which doesn't require that flippant answer now twice.
Order. No, the question started with how can he argue that he's right, and the Prime Minister gave an answer that satisfied that. Member might not agree with it, but that's addressed the
Supplementary question.
Supplementary question, the Right Honourable Winston Peters.
Does he agree with John Christensen, Executive Director of the Tax Justice Network, that, and I quote them, trusts are used in many instances as one of the basic building blocks of these sophisticated tax evasion structures, end of quotes? If not, why not?
The Right Honourable Prime
Mr.
Minister.
Speaker, I'm here to be a tax trust expert, but people use trusts for all sorts of reasons. They use them because they want to have their assets held because they may, for instance, be sued, or they may use trusts for all sorts of other reasons. Members of this House use them all the time.
Supplementary question.
Supplementary question, the Right Honourable Winston Peters.
Quoting from this long statement from the Prime Minister, quotes, tax havens are where there is non-disclosure of information. New Zealand has full disclosure of information, so all you've got is a situation where New Zealand has taken a different view from a lot of jurisdictions, and that's because the way we tax is we tax a set law. In other words, it's all about making sure that New Zealanders pay their fair share of tax, under quotes.
I do need a supplementary question, not a long quote.
Right. Well, having to conclude, in other words, it's all about making sure that New Zealanders pay their fair share of tax, unquotes. What on earth does that mumbo-jumbo really mean?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, well, it sounded a lot better when I said it, but, Mr. Speaker, the answer was that we tax a set law, and the reason we tax set laws is because it's good tax policy, because it stops New Zealanders actually creating taxes in all sorts of foreign jurisdictions and avoiding paying tax in their home country called New Zealand.
Supplementary question.
Supplementary question, the Right Honourable Winston Peters.
Well, then, if he is right, why are so many international commentators and now the Australians having a go at us for being, in their words, a tax haven?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Well, as the member knows, people throw around all sorts of comments, but New Zealand is not a tax haven.
Supplementary question.
Supplementary question, Right Honourable Winston.
Can he assure this House that none of his present or former ministers, that's him as Prime Minister, have been and are involved in tax haven activity?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Speaker, I can't speak for any other member because we have a pecuniary interest list that people have to record. But as I've recorded on my pecuniary interest, I have two trusts. One of them has been the long-established trust I've had in my wife's name, the JP and BIK Family Trust, and the other is the Allgate Trust, which is established so it could be a blind trust that when I became Prime Minister, all of my assets could go in there.
Supplementary question.
Order.
Supplementary question.
Order. Order. The Honourable Amy Adams, I've called for order.
Is
Right
that,
Honourable Prime
is that blind
Right
trust?
Honourable Winston Peters.
Is that blind trust one with 2020 vision?
Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Speaker, I have no ministerial responsibility there other than to say that a blind trust was established as other Prime Ministers have because it's good practice to do so.
Supplementary question.
Supplementary question. Right Honourable Winston Peters.
Why, since he's become the Prime Minister, has there been a threefold increase in offshore trusts operating in New Zealand, were it not for the discovery internationally of just how lax our tax money laundering disclosure regime is?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr Speaker, that's not true. Tax laws around trusts were established in New Zealand in 1988. The disclosure regime change was implemented in 2006. Subsequent to that, there's been a number of other things that have been done to improve aspects of trust. In 2013, the OECD gave a report on New Zealand and fully cleared New Zealand.
Supplementary question. Right Honourable Winston Peters.
Well, if that's the case, why, subsequent to that date he gave as the reason why we should be all relaxed about it, have the Ministry of Business, Innovation and Employment and Treasury expressed their concern about the existence of tax haven activity in New Zealand, and why should we believe him and not them?
The Right Honourable Prime
Mr
Minister.
Speaker, as I said, in 2013 the OECD gave New Zealand a clean bill of health. What's also happened is that New Zealand continues to work with the OECD about its base minimisation, but IRD regularly puts up a menu of options that could be looked at as part of its work program. It wasn't the #1 priority for the government at the time because compared to other measures where we could have them working, it would be actually about collecting more tax for New Zealanders.
Question number 2, Andrew Little.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Prime Minister. Does he stand by his statement that New Zealand is not a tax haven because, quotes, New Zealand has full disclosure of information, end quotes, given Cone Marshall, a law firm specialising in establishing trusts for foreigners, say, quotes, the identity of the settlor need not be disclosed and the trust deed is not registered with any tax or government authority, end quotes, and, open quotes, there is no obligation to file any trust accounts with any person or institution or to have such accounts audited, end quotes.
And as I call the Right Honourable Prime Minister, my office has been advised this answer may well be longer than normal. The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr Speaker, yes, because there is more than one step in the disclosure process. Initially, a New Zealand resident trustee must submit a foreign trust disclosure form, an IR 607, which simply records the name of the trust and the trustee's contact details. However, the trustee must also keep detailed financial and other records, including the trust deed, details of settlements and distributions, including the recipient's name and address, details of the trust's assets and liabilities, the identity of the settlors and the beneficiaries of the trust, and money that the trust receives and spends. Inland Revenue can get this kind of information and will give it to the tax authorities in any other country if requested under a relevant tax agreement or proactively if that country wishes. I'm advised by Inland Revenue that New Zealand has always been able to comply with these sorts of information requests from treaty partners. This is certainly full disclosure of information. Mr Speaker, the income in these trusts is quite rightly outside our tax base as foreign income earned by foreigners. It is up to other tax authorities around the world to enforce their own tax laws on this income and on their own residents. We can help them do that by providing detailed information to them on request about trusts that are administered from New Zealand. Mr Speaker, I make the second point, which is we automatically disclose that information to Australia. They're one jurisdiction that has asked us. No other jurisdiction has. These disclosure regimes, which by any definition are broad and deep, were the ones passed by the Labor government in 2006.
That's right. Supplementary.
Order.
Blame someone else.
Order. Order. Supplementary question, Andrew Little.
Is he seriously telling the House that the only obligation that a foreign trust is obliged to follow or to make, which is completion of an IR 706 form and nothing else, constitutes a full disclosure regime for this type of vehicle?
Mr.
The
Speaker,
Right Honourable Prime
well, for a
Minister.
start, if it's a 607 form or a 706 form, and secondly, Mr. Speaker, as I pointed out in the answer, which was very long and very detailed, that is but the starting point, which requires them to keep a hugely detailed information what's in there and report that when required. They were the rules that Labor thought were right when they passed this disclosure in 2006. If the member's now telling us that Labor got it wrong, get on his feet and apologise.
Yeah, supplementary.
Someone else, John, you're pathetic.
Order.
Blame someone else.
Order. Supplementary question, Andrew Little.
Why has he failed to heed the warnings from the New Zealand Law Commission, the Chartered Accountants Australia and New Zealand, the OECD and IRD that New Zealand's weak offshore tax laws allow wealthy foreigners to subvert laws and dodge taxes?
The Right Honourable
Mr.
Prime
Speaker,
Minister.
I'm prepared to accept that I made one mistake, and that's relying on Labor. They passed the rules.
Supplementary.
Did you vote for them?
Order.
Did you vote for them?
Order. Supplementary question, Andrew Little.
Can he guarantee no offshore trusts registered in New Zealand are being used to hide illegally obtained assets or dodge tax?
The Right Honourable
Speaker,
Prime
no,
Minister.
No Prime Minister could give that assurance any more than Helen Clark could have when this law was passed, no doubt with the support of David Parker in 2006. But Mr. Speaker, what is quite clear is New Zealand gives all of that information not only to Australia but any jurisdiction that asks for that, and we've been able to comply with every jurisdiction that's asked. Now, I also note that we have 40 double tax agreements and 11 information sharing agreements, one of which includes Malta.
Supplementary.
You warned 3 years
Order.
ago?
Supplementary question, Andrew Little.
What effect does he think it has on New Zealand's reputation when we are viewed as a tax haven, harbouring billions of dollars, and his only reaction is to boast that it earns us $24 million a year in lawyers' fees and accountants' fees?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, New Zealand is not a tax haven. Tax havens don't have the disclosure regimes that New Zealand have. But, Mr. Speaker, it's as simple as this. If it's such a bad idea, it was Labor in 1988 who passed the trust legislation. It was Labor in 2006 that had the disclosure.
Order.
And if it was a great idea to close...
Order. The Prime Minister. When I rise to my feet, it requires the Prime Minister to cease his answer.
Point of order.
Point of order, Right Honourable.
Mr. Speaker, for countless answers now, the Prime Minister has departed from doing his job answering the question and attacked another political party for a law that is 10 years old and 7 years after he got the job. Please ask him to act responsibly and answer the questions he's being asked.
Order. 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 The Prime Minister addressed the question almost immediately, and then because he was then responding to interjections which weren't... Order. Because the Prime Minister was then responding to interjections, it's inevitable that some politics will enter into the argument. Supplementary question, Andrew Little.
How does he expect to go to international forums and stop multinational corporations dodging their New Zealand tax when he is letting foreign tax dodgers use New Zealand as a tax haven?
That's right. The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, firstly, the latter part of the question from the member I believe to be wrong. Secondly, in all of the international forums I've been in, the nearly 8 years I've been Prime Minister, no one has ever raised this issue with me. I'm not aware of them ever raising it with a Minister of Revenue. And, Mr. Speaker, as I said, in 2013, New Zealand was given a clean bill of health by the OECD.
Order. Supplementary question, James Shaw.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Does he acknowledge that Inland Revenue said in 2013 that, quote, our foreign trust rules continue to attract criticism, including claims that New Zealand is now a tax haven in respect of trusts, end quote?
Mr. Speaker,
Right Honourable
I haven't seen the
Prime Minister.
particular quotes, but as I said earlier, IRD come up with a whole range of things they want on the work program. I would have thought the most important thing is making sure that New Zealanders actually pay their fair share of tax, and that's been the priority.